everyone. Yeah, I think I've got a little bit of a challenge ahead of me because obviously I'm the last speaker here on Friday, and after this incredible 2 days with amazing presentations highlighting all of the challenges that heat presents, I'm just going to throw another one in the mix, and that is the risk that the relationship between exposure to heat and mosquito-borne diseases. I'm an architect, finishing up my PhD at the Royal Danish Academy, in the centre of Copenhagen, and I'm part of this project called the MBD3 project, which is this large cross-disciplinary project looking at how we can adapt healthcare environments to prevent mosquito-borne diseases. So our project is based here in Zanzibar, which is off the east coast of Africa. And it's an area with high risk of mosquito-borne diseases. And it's also an area where the government is building a lot of healthcare and hospital infrastructure. And so to illustrate this, this is a timeline of hospital bed capacity over time. And each one of these beds represents 100 hospitals. So that isn't just literally 100 hospitals in a room, it's all of the infrastructure, built infrastructure needed to house 100 beds in a hospital, so 100 people can stay overnight. And just for comparison, Greece Hospital, which is just over the road, that's around 1,000 bed capacity. So this is like a really common metric to both measure the size of hospitals and measure how the healthcare capacity that a country has. So healthcare hospital building kind of plodded along at quite a steady rate throughout the past century in Zanzibar. And then in 2022, something kind of quite unusual happened. So the Zanzibari government used money from the IMF as COVID relief money and invested it into building new hospital infrastructure. So it went from having around 1,200 hospital beds across all of its hospitals to around 2,400 in 2 years. This is like a doubling of hospitals. And this was done through the building of 9 of these district hospitals and 1 large regional hospital. And all 9 of these hospitals are the same kind of copy-paste design, just in different locations spread across these 2 islands. And they all look like this. This one is in Shambuni, which is near Stone Town. And it's 4 of these hospitals that the MBD3 project is working with. So the MBD project, MBD stands for mosquito-borne disease. And this is a 5-year project that has these various objectives, but the one that I'm most involved with is how do we co-create alterations to these hospital environments to reduce the risk of mosquito-borne disease transmission within these new district hospitals. And this really is a transdisciplinary project with many different tons of people working across many different institutions. And I've tried to capture this here to highlight that, but also to show that while I'm up here talking about this project, I'm a small part within this much larger picture. So given the theme of the symposium, you might be wondering, what has heat got to do with reducing mosquito-borne diseases? Well, a couple of things. So when building users are too hot, they typically try and find ways to cool themselves down. And a classic way to do this is to open windows and doors and screen openings. And this provides entry points for mosquitoes to enter inside buildings, enter inside ward areas. Another thing is that when a space is too hot, it becomes less comfortable to sleep underneath a bed net, because that bed net becomes a barrier for airflow, which would otherwise cool you down. And lastly, when a space is poorly ventilated, you get this buildup of CO2 within the space. And CO2 in our breath is actually a key attractant of mosquitoes. So through simulations, we find that if you have a really underventilated space, you have these high concentrations of CO2 leaking out from small gaps, say in doors or like slightly open windows. And then mosquitoes can track this inside and find people to bite. And lastly, when we zoom out, we can see that our warming climate is actually expanding the habitat range and capacity of certain disease-carrying mosquitoes into new territories. So our project team wanted to find out, or better understand, how hot or thermally comfortable these hospitals were. So we did the old-fashioned thing, like ask people that use the hospital how they experienced it. But we also set up this sensor network across the hospitals, which was 100 sensors that we set up in wards and consultation spaces and waiting areas to try and get a feel of what is the environment inside. And we also use this is a thermal camera, which just provides small snapshots of the thermal environment. So this is a thermal image from inside one of the wards. This is a patient, and this is an unshaded window. What's happening here is the patient is getting kind of blasted by this sunlight, and this is a design problem. If there was an overhang on this window, there wouldn't be this light coming through this window. This is from inside the waiting area, and here we found something kind of contrary, where actually in these spaces, which were passively cooled using the materials, ventilation, shading, they're actually relatively comfortable to be inside. So we wanted to look at, can we apply these passive approaches to the ward areas? And we couldn't really radically change the design of the wards to make them passively cooled, because this would be a huge change to the building infrastructure. But what we could do is kind of look back at the history of hospital infrastructure in Zanzibar. And while there was this mass building of hospitals in the 2020s, there was also this copy-paste hospital building in the 70s and 80s. And these pavilion-style cottage hospitals, they're all the same design, and they're all using these passive approaches. And in one of our hospital sites, we actually had these two different hospital types side by side. So on the left here, we have the new hospital, and then over on the right, we have this old 70s hospital. So what we did is we set up sensors inside the wards in the new hospital and the old hospital and compared them. And this is what we found. The red line is the new buildings, and the blue line is the old buildings. And on average, these older buildings were around 3 degrees cooler than the new buildings. And then when you look at other factors that affect thermal comfort, like airflow or the clothes that you wear or what you're doing in that space, this difference is even more pronounced. So this is a graph showing the percentage of people dissatisfied, and it uses a thermal comfort model developed by Fanger, who's a Danish scientist from the 70s. And it records estimates the number of people in the space that would be dissatisfied with the environment. So on average, around 40% of people in these new wards would be dissatisfied, they'd be uncomfortable in these ward environments. So what's causing this difference? This is a comparison of these two different types of ward buildings. And one key difference is that these older buildings have windows either side of the wards, so this allows for cross ventilation. Whereas these new hospitals are what we call double stacked, so you have rooms on either side of the corridor. And the reason for this is because this is a kind of denser way of getting more people into a building. But what happens is that you only have one side that can be ventilated, so you get much less ventilation. So you don't get that cooling effect of the air passing through a space. Oops. Just go back. The other thing is that these new hospitals are much more exposed to the sun. So this is a simulation using data from the same period as the sensor data, comparing how exposed the outer facade of these buildings was between these two buildings. And the new buildings are really exposed, whereas the old buildings, they're virtually they're completely shaded the entirety of the time. And we also see this in the thermal energy. So you can see this is the temperature of the walls of one of the wards. And you also see here the difference that you have when you have different colours of exterior buildings. So the white column here has the same exposure to sunlight, but it's around 3 degrees cooler than this light blue wall. So even these really subtle differences in colour make a huge difference to the thermal comfort. And another factor is this space around the building, the landscape around the building. Kind of look at the difference between the space around these two buildings. This is a comparison of the concrete paving between these two areas. And it's nearly double the amount of concrete paved area in the new building compared with the older one.